Hello out there, everybody. Welcome back to In the Kitchen. This is episode number 8, and we're going to be talking about world building today. I am Adam Kraft, and we are here with Michael Startzman, the executive chef of Battle Sauce Industries and whatever company we are becoming as we spread through the gaming cosmos. We're going to be opening tonight with a roundtable chat. It's going to be open for everybody to jump in and take part. It is world building, and I think most of us here that'll be here tonight anyway have some experience in that. I see Media Stream Press out there. Kelly Williams is here, and Ardelincourt. I'm apologies. Drop in the chat if you want to say hi. Let us know you're here. You can jump in to talk. You can raise your hand to speak, and we'll invite you in, and you can be on camera with us if you want, or not, but it is an open table. Michael, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, better than you were last night. So, also on that note, too, if anybody doesn't know, there should be an invite to speak or request to speak at the bottom of the screen on Discord that you can hit, and that'll put you... we'll be able to hear what you're saying. You don't have to turn your camera on if you don't want to, but anyway, that's an option. So I'm doing good, Adam. How about you?
So he was talking about yesterday's migraine event. Those of you that may not know me, I am Mr. Migraine. That's my only mutant power, and it sucks, and that's all I got. So we were a little concerned if I was going to be able to be here today for this one. The last couple days have been weird. But yes, hello, and Kelly is, I believe, jumping around between a couple of different things, us included. He had some stuff to say. So Andrew, I know that is you for Media Stream out there. Ardelincourt, who are you?
He's on Instagram. He and the Battle Sauce account. He's writing a book. I forget the name of it right now. He's typing up. He's typing a book and has all about and knows all about world building. There we go.
Hi, Andy. Medieval fantasy. So it's interesting. Andrew is multi-genre, if I'm not mistaken. Andrew, please correct me if that is not the case, but I think you work in a lot of areas from like fantasy to cyberpunk. And I'm looking here, Andy. Yes, sir. He says Andy's novel is In Times of War, A Tale of Ardelincourt. That's actually a rather badass name. But with the different kind of genres, different kind of backgrounds, world building, I'm happy to jump in, but if you guys want to get us rolling, the initial thought would be, where's that nugget start? How do you determine once you make up your mind that you want to do this? Where do you begin? What are the things that you take note of, or that you feel like you have to understand or not in order to start playing?
Can you sort of give us a rundown of, sort of break down what you're thinking of? Because world building in general is a pretty, massive term. If you could sort of break down what it is you're thinking about in terms of like world building and what all that actually means, are you...
Yeah, certainly. And it's good to see your face again, Andrew. World building. So I guess for me, when I get rolling with it, narratively speaking, I need to know the basics, I guess, for things like the technology level. Is there supernatural elements to it? Is there the paranormal? If it's one of my games, you bet your ass there's something awful in it, and it's probably got tentacles.
It most definitely has tentacles.
Too many teeth. But essentially, yeah, that's like when I think about world building, and you think about the whole homebrew scene. We like to say that Battle Sauce is the exemplar technology for homebrew mechanics. But really and truly, what we're talking about is building off of concepts we already know and typically modifying those. So that gives a lot of room in or play with, but I tend to go with the technology level and is there paranormal elements to it. Those are my nuggets. Andrew, and I was hoping you would be here because I guarantee you have a lot to say about it.
All right, just double checking. Mic check. I sound good?
Yeah.
You sound awesome, dude.
Hey, good. This conversation brings to mind a book I was reading by Orson Scott Card about writing science fiction and speculative fantasy, or speculative fiction rather. And he talked a lot about whether, and I agreed with him. He talked a lot about whether the whole point of the story is like the world, or whether it's a concept, or whether it's character-based story. So he talked about, if I remember his example, was that like Lord of the Rings was basically like a travel log. Like like the whole point was to get them there. Yes, there's a story, but it was to go from A to B and see some cool stuff on the way. And I think there's a lot of fiction that kind of fits that, especially in the fantasy genre, because you have like this cool world and you want to introduce it. So other times it's a concept, like, hey, what if there was a world where all the superheroes are bad? And then you delve into that idea, like what Brandon Sanderson's Steelheart series, where there was just like a corrupting influence or whatnot. So again, and I think he kind of hit the nail on the head by saying it really depends on, is this a character-driven story or a concept or even just world-based? So.
Man, that's a high-level question, and it makes me feel a little inadequate in my preparatory manners of things, because I never get into the idea of I guess, what is the driving engine, I don't know that I have the presence of mind to do that. Maybe that's why you've written so much more, is because you understand what you're going for. I tend to stumble into most of these things and try to build it while I'm in motion with it. And I think that, that's exciting, Jimmy, but the readiness that I often have is pretty lacking, and I find I have to build along the way maybe more than I needed to.
Are you talking about when you specifically make games, when you're running games?
World building and designing the backgrounds of things, because in my head, this is how it looks. Dude, what if we had a guy that was like part wolf and part like lizard and had big hand cannons and could shoot temporal nexuses out of his butt? And then everything else comes out of that. So I guess I tend to be character driven, if that's the case. Or is it concept driven? Maybe I'm just a concept nut. I don't know.
There's definitely a fine line there, I think. Yeah, I think some of the cooler stories try to mix elements of all three of those sort of things.
I'm curious, Adam, does that stop your enjoyment of like when you watch movies or you read novels, that if you don't know the whole thing going into it? But like even the Star Wars stuff, for example, like you don't know some of that stuff until it unfolds later on.
I think we're pretty predictable at this point with Star Wars.
Well, maybe Star Wars was a bad example, but he used Lord of the Rings, and some of that stuff you don't know the whole story about things until the story keeps progressing. Or is it just
true? And so there was is it Chainsaw Man?
Yeah.
Startsman introduced me to that somewhat recently, and one of the things that it was interesting to see was that the background, nothing about anything until a moment in the anime makes an appearance. So it's not, you have no real backstory, and it takes an event to get that kind of going. When you homebrew, when you make up your own worlds, your own concepts, like, is that, narratively speaking, something that takes a lot of planning to do that? Like, none of this shoot from the hip stuff works, I think, very long or very well. Have you had that experience where you just do a little one shot and you got zero to prep with? I'm sure you have.
Yeah. I guess it really depends. I mean, I think you could start off with a basic concept like, hey, I'm going to run a vampire game and we'll just see where it goes. And then, I don't know, maybe pull something different out. Like, these vampires do this differently than the standard thing, or you pull out a zombie game, or I don't know, just hey, well, let's everybody play orcs this time. We're gonna do the bad guys, but actually be the good guys. I mean, I think it's very easy to take a concept like that and let it grow. But I don't know. I think experienced DMs could probably definitely run with it for a while. I mean, just give them anything. It's almost like improv, isn't it? Like have you ever seen the thing where like the like an improv guy says, "Give me 3 words in 30 seconds, and I'll have a story or a joke for you."
I love that stuff. I love that stuff.
And I think we're kind of creatively sort of in that same, like, I don't know, that same niche sort of, right? I mean, like, hey, I plan on playing a vampire game, but then this guy over here decided he's going to play such and such character that doesn't fit at all. But he's an interplanar elf. Well, where the heck does that fit in with the whole spiel? And then you really quickly just start making connections. And like, well, the interplanar elves have been fighting against the vampires for millennia, and because of such and such rift or schism that I don't know. I think it's like a muscle, right?
I think you hit it right on the head, and I was yes, I think you're 100% correct, and I feel like though that's a knack though too that you have to kind of build up and like hone for that. That's an uncomfortable way to run things if you're not used to that. But I get the most joy in the spur of the moment character interactions and the bizarro stuff. Like that's really what keeps me interested, actually, because things go off script immediately.
Well, when you're running a game, you don't ever, like, if a player or character wants to do something, do you ever use world building as a reason that they can't do something? Because I don't think that's the way you operate, right? You never say that, like, well, this is not how this world works, or this is not like a religion in this atmosphere. That's not something you ever put on it, because you're kind of talking about home brewing versus like a game that's already been developed and that you're sitting down and you're playing a module or something in like Dungeons and Dragons or Vampire, for example. Also, those already have sort of presets, but the game is taking you through steps, and you don't ever really. And I know for like your homebrewing stuff, especially when we're running or talking Battle Sauce, nothing ever really stops us, in you especially, from saying, well, that's not something that's actually happening in this world. That's not a reliable thing, but here's a way to work around that or something. Is that right? Am I thinking about that correctly? Did you understand the words?
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out who we were directing it at.
Well, I think that was that. Yeah, that would be both, right?
Both of us.
Do you want to hit it first?
Honestly,
I'm definitely got an answer.
Whenever you try to follow a module, I try to be a little more faithful, but I mean, I don't think there's ever been a mission that went through without a hitch. I mean, there's always like off on a tangent, so I think you have to roll with it. And the old thing about, hey, the rule of cool, let's just roll with it. And so I think you have to be somewhat willing. But on the other hand, I think there are extremes that do sort of break the setting if there's a specific feel or mood you're going for. I mean, if you're playing 1800s technology and this guy wants to pull out a cyborg arm, I just don't know that that's gonna. You can make it like a steampunk gaslight kind of.
Look, you can make that work, man. You can absolutely make it work, and
you twist it. Yeah, I mean, you can have a very League of Extraordinary Gentlemen kind of weird steampunk look. You can make it, but you're like, well, it won't be sideboard, but it could be like this, and then hopefully, like, the players are gonna work with you there. I mean, it's got to be a little give and take, right?
Absolutely does. And having said that, like, I never say no to a concept that's in game as the game's rolling. So if the environment says these things are there and you want to try something, go for it. I love that. The robotic arm in a steampunk environment, going back to the 1200s, I love that. That's all awesome. I don't like being told no, and so I had a game that I was in that was being ran by a dear friend, and it was werewolves, and it was a one-shot game. You know, like things were not supposed to go long term. It's just a rock and roll kind of thing. And I was told no to having a werewolf with a minigun. And I couldn't figure out why. And so it was told to me why later in a very insightful, generous manner. But, I mean, like, if you have a werewolf that wants to shoot a minigun, that's kind of the point, you know, right? So, like, you have moments like that where the ridiculous is all right. How do you feel about ownership of those environments, though? So once you get rolling with it, are you cool, like, letting other people start to play in that world and change it and make your rules their rules? And, you know, where does the artist stop and the art begin with the audience? Kind of a question. And that may be my house burning down, right? I don't know what's up.
Yeah, keep looking to see who's got smoke.
Yeah, which one of us is... Kelly, are you still alive over there?
That's a good question. You know, I don't know. I tried to write, say, like collaborative fiction a couple times where you have like a shared world and universe, but I always wrote a lot more than everybody else, so then I kind of drowned them out. Or they would start something and never complete it. So I always kind of wanted to be able to do that and share and see what they would do with any of my environments. I mean, we've wrapped that multiverse project, and it would be cool to see if they built different environments to go to, or a lot of them were these little vignettes. So it was kind of almost a shame to pass that world on, so it would be cool to have them go back. But on the other hand, when you're writing a product, you kind of reach a point where you need to move the story fast enough to reach some kind of climax or endpoint or expected endpoint. So I think a lot of times, especially the way we write it as a team, you don't always have as much time as you would like to delve into that. So absolutely, if another group wrote to me and said, hey, you know, we ended up taking your little mini mission in the realm of fire, and it ended up being like a 2-month ordeal. Great, you know.
That's fantastic. Actually, that's kind of what you would want, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I don't think you put it out there if you don't want people to fiddle with it. So otherwise, you just kind of. I'm sure there are definitely people who write very strict campaigns and with world expectations, and they hand you a primer before you can even pick up a character and a set of dice, because you've got to understand certain basics. But,
well, you know, I think that's really interesting, because then it makes me wonder, especially as, you know, Adam and I work through designing a game, and actually the Battle Sauce cookbook is pretty much a system for using, and then we're going to create worlds, you know, within those, or ages as we call them. They're also called cuisines, and each one of those will have their own. Yeah, it's a whole thing with us, all of the food references. In each one of those will have sort of their.
Thai food look like?
What's the what food?
What's Thai food look like in Battle Sauce?
Spicy.
It's very spicy.
Good. Sorry, go ahead.
So, you know, to that end, we are creating books, and I always just sort of makes me wonder, because in my mind, I'm like, I always tell Adam, like, no, we don't have to have every little thing, you know, spelled out for this beginning, for somebody to sit down and play this game. And I feel like players don't really want that, because they're going to add their own spin on it anyway. At least if they're homebrewing. If we're writing and designing like a game for them to play, which we call meals, this feels like it's going to get convoluted really quickly. If they're there's the cuisine, the meals are the games, campaigns, things like that. So if we're writing that, to me, that sort of thing is very specific into like the kinds of things that are going on within it, but it still exists within a larger world in which all things are possible. but like Adam, I'm also really don't want to be. I don't want to be told no when I'm playing. You know, I want to be like, no, this is cool. And like you said earlier on, the rule of cool. So it just sort of makes me wonder, what is the amount and depth of the background that you need for world building in order to sort of get a game off in running, up and running? Is it how much of it's necessary? Do you need to know religions and government systems and that kind of stuff, or is it enough to be like, well, here are the larger aspects of it, and here you go, you sit down and start, and we'll fill in the gaps as it goes? That's also for you, Adam. I know you've got thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, it probably depends on what the point of the story is, I guess. Like we wrote Karen Breed, which was a historical sort of 1800s-ish sort of on like fairy tales and such. So we kind of re-envisioned all that. So they had to understand at least the whole point of the city and how it had kind of this historical Beowulf character that had founded the city, and eventually play through, they'll find out how that ties into all these misfortunes that are happening. So, long story short, or to get to the point, I think that it really depends. I mean, the minimum is whatever they need to know to solve the story, if there is some kind of like solution to be found, or at least enough that basic theory behind the whole world. But I think there are definitely some players that really, or DMs that really like to get into that background story. So
yeah.
I don't know if there's any perfect answer, because I don't think you're ever going to make everybody happy. Because, I mean, I was talking to my coworker at work who's helping me work on this kind of Pokemon mashup game. He's like, dude, nobody's going to read more than three pages of actual story, like lore. Nobody's going to care. So they're just going to take whatever they like from yours and throw it in a different setting. He's like, but I want them to play in this setting. They're not going to do it. But I have a story plan. No, they're not going to do it. So we've been going back and forth.
But I think ultimately, providing that information is really all that you can do. Once you've done that and you're like, here's the information, you play it however you want to play it. It's all up to you. Here's the stuff that I've given you. And that's what we try to work with Battle Sauce. Is like, we try to give you all the key elements and then let you go and do what you're going to do, because you're going to anyway. And I think, like what you're talking about, adding that 3-page story, I think, that kind of stuff is great. That's information that they can use if they want to, but they don't have to. Once it's out of your hands, they can do whatever they want with it. And I think that's a good approach in my mind anyway, but not having to be beholden to that. As long as you've given them enough room, to play around and be like, well, actually, I kind of want to do this. I want to bring the cyborg arm in. And you're like, well, okay, we'll fit that somewhere.
With that in mind, then I kind of wouldn't mind, because with you, Startsman, you and I have had these discussions, sometimes arguments. Andrew and you and I have chatted a little bit about gaming stuff, but I love the lore. I love the meta lore. I love the interconnected little tabs with different characters and backgrounds and like histories of different things. And it's not that I'm heavy into historical research. I'm really not, but I do love the idea that things are interconnected somewhere, right? And it's hard for me just to drop a disconnected piece into something without my head automatically starting to add it in. You feel like, because, and I don't want to talk for you, Michael, necessarily, but my impression has always been for Michael that the lore doesn't really matter. You don't really need it. It's cool if it's there, but it doesn't really matter. Because at the end of the day, you're wanting a game to play where you get to rock and roll, have a good time, and then you go home if you need to, without worrying about where everything came from. Conversely, I struggle with that. Like, it's hard for me just to have a game where I have a good time, where I don't know at least some of that. So, world building for me, I guess, kind of coming back around to that, again, is a concept piece as well. Are you able to rock and roll without the lore, without the backstories? Can that cybernetic army just be there? or do you give a shit why it's there? You know, like kind of thing.
Yeah, I think players these days expect a little more. I mean, if you look at a lot of the TSR modules and stuff, a lot of it was kind of hack and slash play through. I mean, the traditional ones back in first edition, second edition, right? It was, hey, here's the new flavor of the month. Let's defeat it. And I think they're looking for a little more now, probably due to streamers and other things that. I mean, they've popularized these characters that people are following through. I mean, if you asked me 10, 20 years ago about, hey, are people going to sit around and watch each other play Dungeons and Dragons on the internet?
Be like, nah, really? That's not going to happen. What are you talking about?
Yeah, so I like to know. I mean, I think it's important to at least have motivations. I mean, I've seen some very limited, like, profiles or whatever written up of monsters and stuff, and it's like, hey, here's their behaviors and their motivations and stuff. I think you need at least that.
Oh yeah, totally. But and like I said, I don't want to talk on his behalf while he's answering a chat, because that I don't want to misrepresent him, but I apparently am very much a stickler for that. Who the hell would have guessed?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that the lore doesn't matter, because I think that's what makes a good story. You need to care about these things and these people and why you're doing the actions that you're doing. But I do think that part of our responsibilities as game creators is to write engaging games, and at the end of the day, it's putting it in the hands of people that are going to take that and use the best parts of it that they like, and adapt the parts that they don't. And I think what we need to do is be able to give them enough information and leeway to do that. And I think if you give them too much and you try to make it too tight for them, then it loses the excitement of being able to say, well, I want to do this. I want to have a cyborg arm, to come back to that example over and over again. And why can't I? Or, Adam, when you were talking earlier about, what was it? The wolf and the, it's gone now, but maybe it's the beer.
The wolf with the minigun.
The wolf with the minigun, right? Why can't? I mean, if that's what you like, and this is what's going to make that game fun for you, why not? Why can't you do something like that? And if there are very specific reasons, then okay, maybe that's it. Or as your job as a DM, sauce boss, game master, whatever the thing is to figure out a way in which to incorporate that into the story. Okay, how can it be possible in this example? How are we going to do that now? And that way Adam can have a good time playing, and everybody else doesn't feel like, well, no, everything's just up for grabs and anything can happen apparently. What are we playing, Battle Sauce?
Ruined another game. Way to go, Adam.
Well, maybe you just had to level up a few times before you could get to the minigun.
Maybe that's all it was. Also, Zach and Oz, hello. I see you out there. Like, if you didn't know, you can chime in, you can ask to speak, jump on, you can chat.
Those are the NVNG guys. They know all about Discord and how to do all this stuff.
Babe in the woods. This is kind of open for everybody here. What is your favorite kind of world building stuff? Like, what do you enjoy the most? Is there a certain kind of thing you enjoy? A certain genre, maybe, or a certain kind of atmosphere or mood? What really gets your world building juices going? I love horror. I love tentacles. Too many mouths. Too many eyes.
Oh, does he? Does he ever? I'll create a nice innocent character, and he's like, "Oh, that'd be cool. What if we had to do this?" I'm like, "No, please don't."
I'm big into dark fantasy too, like that grim dark, or I don't play a lot of high fantasy or design a lot of high fantasy, so whenever I throw in magic, it's usually limited and usually has some kind of dark iteration, I guess. And I think a lot of stories are aimed at preventing some kind of terrible event or stopping some kind of attack, so that's a little bit toward I uh, what I lean toward, I guess.
Have you had to do one? Not had to. Have you made a world for players that really wanted something real specific, and you were just inside like, oh God, no, why? But then did it? Like, have you ever had to do that?
Uh, Maybe a few times, but I mean, going on that same idea, have you ever made like a cheat sheet for all the players before they started, so they could at least be a little bit versed in your setting, and then had them totally ignore it and refuse to read it?
Yes, a player refusing to do anything that you want him to. Yes, I
Because
have
a couple times, I literally had, all right, this is the cheat sheet for the setting. Like, if you know this, it'll kind of make more sense. And they're like, I'm not gonna read it.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. That's like kind of that's all sort of mixed in there with it, and you definitely need that kind of nonchalant disregard, to the world because it exists, But it's neat because when you do that too, you can start to build in the consequences. If you've got a world type developing, and then it gets ignored or goes off the rails, that doesn't mean the world building didn't changed. It just means their perception of what it's doing is a little different. I like it that you have a good time with that, at times. Mess around with that. I'm checking the chat real quick here. Michael, have you, Oz is saying that he generally feels like the game, let's see, I generally get a feel of the game based on the system that is being played and the other people I'm playing with. The game system for me tells me what kind of character. Yeah, so like, right, I guess that's, the thing. But a lot of players have very specific character types that they enjoy no matter what it is. Shadowrun mage, combat mage is still a badass mage, and a D&D mage at higher levels. Can you still not pick up knives and hammers if you're a mage in D&D? Did that get changed?
Or metal weapons if you're a cleric or something. You had to be bludgeoning.
Just dumb as hell. I'm sorry, but it's just I just can't. And that's the kind of world building thing that I don't get. Like the kind of constraints that can start coming down.
Well, and that's something you wouldn't stick to, right? If you were playing that game, you would say, no, I'm throwing this rule out. We're not going to do that. But then does that upset the balance of the way in which those characters work and, relate to the world at large? And I think it's interesting, actually, well, this is a little bit of a divergence there, that you mentioned, and I was thinking about it too, that you mentioned Chainsaw Man in the way in which, because we watch that as like spectators not knowing what's going on. But if we were the characters within that world, which is what's happening when you're playing a role-playing game, we would know some of those boundaries at least. Even though some of the characters broke those kinds of things that hadn't been seen in that world before, but certainly that world was created like the half demon, half human guy that had the heart, or was the Chainsaw Man himself, I guess, and this katana demon. Both of those things were sort of new to that world. None of the other characters knew about that kind of stuff, presumably. So it was neat to watch it as a spectator, watch this stuff unfold and learn, so here's some boundaries and things that we don't know. But the characters in that world certainly did know, except for that one sort of character type, which I thought was, that's an interesting distinction, I think, between watching and playing, or maybe that's writing and playing. That was a roundabout way of earlier on there.
So if you're talking about as far as the playing of that goes, there's a lot of playing. I'm in a game right now where 98% of it is written. It's written text with very little dice rolling, very little actual character sheet needs, and I know nothing about the environment until it starts to occur in the game, and so that ignorance is for me a lot of fun. I feel like and for half of us here, we're probably all game writers from long ago, and I find it hard to play and have a good time anymore. And so I find that the less I know about the mechanics of a game, the more fun I have, unless I'm the one that's writing the game. I don't know. Do you guys still have a good time when you get to roll dice, or do you prefer at this point to world build?
I think I prefer world building, honestly. Even sometimes just writing and creating, even overplaying or DMing. Sometimes it's pretty fun. That being said, I don't get in a lot of opportunities to play. So,
no!
That might color my opinion a little bit. So, but I don't know. I could really enjoy the creative process. So. That's kind of my jam, but
that's funny. I actually really enjoy both of those things. I love figuring out the mechanics so that that it's more engaging than I don't know how to say that without sounding like an ass. Than just rolling dice. That's one of the reasons that we incorporate cards in our game, is because I really want the player to feel like they're doing the action and making the moves and doing that kind of thing, rather than just sort of a random set of dice. But that being said, and we were talking about writing and stories, and back to the Chainsaw Man thing, I wonder if you all were writing that story. Andrew, do you know? Are you familiar with Chainsaw Man?
Vaguely. I mean, I've seen obviously like the images and cosplay and whatnot, and I used to watch a lot of anime, but
we just lost Adam.
I'm more familiar with something like Gantz. Did you ever see that one?
No, I don't know that one.
That one's pretty fun.
So
what's his house on fire?
It was. He's got to shut the door. You know what? The flames will just die down. The fire department will take care of it. I wonder if, in using the Chainsaw Man example again, they had a world set up, everything's sort of defined. There's demons and there's humans, and there's demons for presumably everything: chainsaws, cigarettes, guns, all that kind of stuff. But sort of the premise of the story is that something new is there with him, because he's part devil, or he's and part human, because he's got a devil heart that a devil gave to him, and so he was a chainsaw devil, and so he gets that, and that makes him something different. And to me, in terms of storytelling, is that something that, if you were playing that as a game, would you surprise your players with that, or would that be like a world building thing that they would already know that this kind of thing exists? Maybe there's a character out there that's like that, because to me that's like, that's something you would spring on a character, because that's it's new, and maybe you have a player that plays that way, or maybe it's an NPC and it's something new for the first time, and a way to introduce a new player class or trade or occupation, whatever the thing is.
Yeah, I think keeping that secret would be fun. Definitely if they hadn't seen it before. I think springing it upon them would make it a lot of fun.
I think so too.
I think the surprise would be interesting. And then you'd see them working out, how do I get that? You're like,
yeah.
Can you take my hand off? I want to do an hand. Or an eye or whatnot. And I think I could immediately first see a lot of different opportunities for, I would come into some kind of math somehow. Like, well, if I place this, and this in my body, and I hit this demon threshold of 33%, what happens then?
Oh yeah, I like the percent of demons. That's cool. That's a good idea.
Like meat versus demon flesh. There's a cooking ratio there somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Well done, Andrew.
He knows. He gets it. So that also kind of harkens back to like your idea of, and yes, we're circling back around to the cyborg arm, being able to surprise a character and be like, okay, so this is a thing now, and this is how it happens, or this is the way in which, we're going to deal with it, or something like that. I feel like that's kind of an element that the game runner, the sauce boss, DM, GM, that's sort of on them to sort of figure that out in a homebrewing way. Though at the same time, not everybody wants to homebrew. Nope, not everybody wants to be on the spot and be like, okay, well, how am I going to fix this scenario, or how can I work that in? They will come straight out and say, no, you can't pick up hammers or nails or whatever the thing is. And there are no cyborg arms unless you go and do your magic or science magic or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think that works best after critical fails, doesn't it? I mean, the guy's trying to escape and he loses an arm. Well, now you got to replace it with something. Or the guy falls off the building and takes a lot of bludgeoning damage when he hits. Well, you just crushed your back and you should be dead. But when you wake up, now you've got a demon spine. Congratulations.
Yes, 100% yes.
That's always fun to work in. Like, you have to make the tragedy a bonus somehow, but maybe with a mixed blessing, because now that that demon spine is slowly going to corrupt you. So you only got like 12 sessions before you're completely evil.
Yeah, I hate to say it, because I don't hate to say it. I'm going to own it. Supernatural, Team Dean, love that stuff, right? Love that show. But you get near the end of it and you start to realize, and at this point, if you don't know, it's been out for so long. Spoiler alert coming in. But it's God that is kind of he's the bad guy, right? And so everything that's been going on is because God's kind of an a-hole. And in the same way, I have characters that have been in my worlds that my son has played for years, and my friends, and the things I've done to them. Yeah, Chuck, the things I have done to them. Do you ever feel guilty about the world that you make? Like, I've not lied to characters badly, but I've had characters, for example, my son had a character that we played in real time. He's had this character for going on 18 years. For like 7 of those years, this character was possessed by a demon, and my son didn't know. And the things it was doing behind the scenes and to him. And I lied to his face for 7 years in game time, and I loved it. But there were a couple moments I felt kind of guilty about it, like I was a naughty god, and maybe needed to not be. Do you ever feel those pangs of regret? Like what you've done to the players?
No.
Maybe not. I don't know. It's. I love it. I do, but I'm like, man.
That makes me curious, Adam. Like, what does that gameplay look like if he's possessed by a demon and he doesn't know it? Are you changing the way in which he acts when he says he wants to do something?
So everything there would be game sessions where it would just be him and me, and none of it was real, but he played it as if it was and had no idea that it maybe wasn't. And we rolled the dice for the whole thing and went through all the game, and it didn't happen because it was in his mind. That was the demon manipulating his experience of what reality was. So, I enjoy that. I love messing with the mindset,
everybody, really.
Well, it all comes with it, though. The idea, if you're talking about the world building aspect, part of that world is you can't trust everything. And just because it seems to be there. Part
of your world, maybe. Mine's all rainbows and unicorns, so.
Like I said, I love the tentacles. It appears Kelly is trying to get back on.
He is on.
Oh, hey.
Yeah,
I hear you well. I don't see you at all.
He's been in for a moment.
It's weird.
I might have been jabbering the whole time, but we were talking to Andrew about world building and just the aspects of it. And just to jump in, what do you love about it, hate about it? Do you do it? Do you rely on mostly modules and then you tinker with those? What's the Kelly Williams approach?
No, I have a world that I've been building since the 90s. And writing for Andrew, every book is a new world, so it's a new experience. So having where I come from, I have this built. I have now maps and but the joy of jumping into someone else's creative level of you're creating a world every time you do a book, right? It's an amazing experience. So I feel like I have a full circle, developing a world and sticking and building into each book is a different world. So you have to rethink about how you're going to write an adventure or do something, because the world will be different. And it's, I'll just continue it from. So I've had to learn how to. I use the same world set, but I take thoughts, Stargate and Star Trek, where every adventure, it's a new world that I'll put sort of tunnel, if it's space type, time you're doing connect at some way, that's just, I like to take a little bit from everywhere when I'm doing stuff.
So that whole Star Trek reference was nice, because it wasn't until later on that they started to develop what you would call true arcs. Up until then, though, everything was episodic, and those are fun to me as like one shots with a character, where it's not like you're wanting to build in the longevity, but you might like the character enough that you just kind of want to come back to him now and then. I really like that. What's your go-to, like you've been writing since you said the 90s?
Yeah.
For this one environment, and it must be astoundingly developed.
No, you'd be surprised. A lot of it is, but a lot of influences come people that come into the game or things that you read. But I have material I can just grab one of my little books and be like, oh yeah. So, when I look at maps, that's an entire those mountains. And so once they get the map, instead of just being like, here's your map, it's like two different places. I like to be like, oh, if this mountain range is by its, and so I kind of, so I'm continuously adding to do it, because people give me maps, or like, oh, I'll do your map for you, and then all of a sudden I have a whole island which I could do with this.
Yeah.
Which has its own history now and its own backstory.
But see, I find it interesting that you brought up Star Trek, because part of the world building in Star Trek is that there are different worlds that are undiscovered, right? It's the undiscovered country. So that sort of leaves everything out in the open. And then they talk a lot about how some places are underdeveloped technologically. Yeah, there we go.
Technologically, yeah.
Yeah, and some of them are, advanced and can do space travel and stuff like that. And some of them are gods among the stars. Yeah. And so you get that whole kind of concept. It's really all-encompassing a lot of the times. So that really going to any planet, anything could happen. You could set down on a D&D world if you wanted to, or you could set down on,
it just depends on your table what you feel like doing. Like,
right.
You could be in the same forest for 5 sessions, or you could be like, where do you guys want to go?
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I use Star Trek because season 1 and 2, there were freelance writers that were writing all those episodes until the writing team. Where the original Star Trek had a writing, they wrote every episode. And Next Generation was, they just took scripts from people that turning them at fan base. We don't have So for 2 seasons, they were taking every episode, they were coming to a new, because it's completely new, right? And they didn't reference anything previous episodes till way later in the series, because the writing team, a writer turned in the script and they're gone, right? They don't come back and they might. But the majority of the people just, here's my adventure,
But that analogy could be made, though, that those are fans that are doing homebrewing within, the Star Trek world building rules, as it were.
Every book's every script is a different setting. Yeah, same concept. So that's where I got the concept for Star Trek. Stargate is like, oh, I can connect all my planets.
Yeah.
I can connect. Oh, you guys want to go to the future this time? We'll take our character, a little adjustment, because you go through the, or you walk the barrier and you change a little bit, right? You adapt to the game system.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to, like, people are like, hey, I want to take my D&D character to modern times. All right, let's do it. Let's do some alterations, and then let's go play new something.
The whole idea of the world building being what it is, we at Applesauce, man, that's exactly what we have. It's we don't want a one horse and pony show, like it's. I'm going to use the word gimmick as a means for translating across many genres. It's a mechanism, right? But it's fun as hell. Like Stargate is it's a water tube wormhole.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous. I love it. Like the Picard show, they've got the space-time gateways,
yeah.
the mech things. I mean, it's everywhere, right? Rifts, the role-playing game.
Yep.
Spelljammer. Spelljammer was and then there was the other one for D&D that came out, the Planescape. That's on a shelf over here. That's straight up. Yeah, it's like everywhere, right? Because at the end of the day, just like you said, Kelly, you want your barbarian to go fight replicants on a Mars base. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's turn on some like Van Healy and roll dice.
So you mentioned riffs. I think they were the forefront for that, taking D&D and putting it into the modern age, but then they took it to space. Like
they did.
I have a ton of riff books behind me, but they took it to modern day, to the future in space, and then they took it back to D&D. So if you get the Palladium's RPG, it's D&D, but they have Star Dwarfs and
straight up. It's exactly riffs in D&D world. That's all it is.
I love it. It's so much fun. There's so much you can do.
You know what wizards can do? They can shoot a gun if they want. They can pick up a sword.
That's ridiculous.
Shoot a rocket launcher.
No way.
God, people.
You mean magic missiles?
I want the Robotech version of D&D to come out, because I love Robotech. That's an awesome game.
Yeah, I picked up some Robotech stuff way back in the day.
Yeah, but if you're a good storyteller, you have the ability to take these books and homebrew something that fits the game module that you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
Your system and make it fit the edition. You could take it, make it. Whatever game system you're playing, if you're creative enough, take little bits. That's what I do with my home. I take a little bits. I have a percentage table that I broke down, D20, D8, D10, and I made it so that you could have these skills, and this table allows you to. And people enjoy it. It's a lot of fun to just be able to jump into these different game styles, but still play the sheet that you're used to.
I'm curious, because you said that, and this for everybody. You said that as a DM, GM, sauce boss. That's what we use them. If you're creative enough, you can roll with that. But if you're writing games, do you feel like you want to make it so that that's my door opening? Hold on 1 second. How much do you want to give them? Do you want to? Are you writing because you're thinking? Are you thinking like, well, if this person's not creative, I'm going to give them all of the steps. I'm going to give them all the information that they need to know and let the players go through and do their thing and play the game? Or are you writing in with the concept of, well, hopefully, the game runner, sauce boss, GM, DM, etc., can, sort of roll with it, no pun intended, and or maybe it was intended.
So, there's the different levels. So you're a storyteller, trying to take what's written and make it into something fantastic for the table. I think as a writer, know that you're just guiding the story of the session, right? You can't get, if you're going to give them tape where you need to be able to give them enough that they go and run the game they want, right? You don't want to run their game. Why would they want their exactly how to do it? And some people like that. Some people,
yeah.
I don't.
Some people need that.
I try to give the storyteller as much information so they can roll with. So like I was saying, we built a system, a D100 system, so that they could, if they wanted to make a skill, add that mechanic to whatever game system, unless they want to just make their own system and everything like that, which is more difficult. I think if you give tables like they might use that, but again, it's all based on what they take from your product. So you could sit there and spend hours upon hours detail. They might not use 80% of it.
Right, yeah.
Just like the concept of what you're doing. So you just have to be able to separate deep diving into that to where I want to write this 4,000 word, do this thing, but all you're doing is giving them an environment.
Yeah.
And they don't need 20 years of history about what's happened. Not yet.
But it's a cool 20 years, man.
Yeah, it's amazing. No. You put your soul in it. But they might not read it. And they might not tell the team because they might not be that interested, or they have to try to implement later once the players learn more about, do a synopsis. Here's a synopsis of our session. I call them episode sessions. So they have a little history of and I think that's the easiest way. It doesn't over players. You're taking a little bit from what the storyteller is giving you, publisher is giving you, and you're just working through it. But again, everything's based on who's, the GM, battle sauce, or I forgot what it's called.
The sauce boss.
Sauce boss.
Sauce boss.
Shout out to NVNG on that one.
I always say storyteller now because everything else.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, because you're telling a story, right? You're telling the adventure idea for your team to go through it. So it's really, I could sit there and read through a module and read you what the module says to everybody. That would be a really boring game for a lot of people. It's like, no, that's not what's happening at this section. You have to do it this way. Because the book says there's only 3 ways to do it, right? If you start doing stuff like that, then it's just not fun. And people might not buy your product for that.
It isn't fun. Well, the idea too, and you had missed earlier, I hate being told no without a good reason in a game. I feel like if I came up with an idea and if your world supports it, you should let my character try it, even if it kills him. I'm okay with that. I think it's better to have those options. And that gets, and I had asked earlier too, the idea of ownership for these environments. At what point does it stop being the world you've made and it become their environment? And that's in my head instantly. As soon as everybody has a seat, it's just wide open. But you should let people experiment, even if it kills their characters. Or like Andrew said, I'm a huge fan of chopping off the body parts and making a deal with that, or mutating the body parts. So have a good time with it. Absolutely, yeah, you want that open-ended kind of vibe to it.
That's when you can introduce cybernetics or an organism.
Yes,
arm.
Man, the cyborg arm.
Yeah, I'm all about having. We're working on some stuff now, bringing back real disease and gaming diseases. Bring that back because TSR originally did it, but Hasbro's like, oh no, we're age appropriate now, the younger ages, so they stopped using those things. They didn't want to. That was too realistic. Getting dysentery. So they got rid of those disease table stuff because was too much for kids to handle or whatever. So I always loved doing those table. Oh, there, dude, attach, some hands. You can buy some fingers. They might not be yours, but you can have a dragging, pinky or something. Something's wrong with it. You're gonna be cursed out. I love that. You take body parts. A short example for first season of Crumpets and Kerosenes. One of the players, he lost it. And so this is about the same time that Deadpool out, so he had baby hand for so it regenerated his baby hand. He had it for right, 'cause it went into a machine that regenerated his hand, but it was a hole. It had to grow. It didn't. So, I love that kind of concepts and those type of,
I would get tied up in the mechanics of that. So I would literally have 2 different strength rolls. So if
I did.
Oh, great.
You're at disadvantage, you're at disadvantage every time you try to pick something up, and depending on the growth of your baby hand, does it function? Or sometimes, it would free jerk or do something might interrupt what they're doing. That's where the storyteller has to come in and be like, they're doing some stuff. Oh, they're trying to do some. Oh, let's see what happens with baby hand.
No, that's for the story.
Monkey bars. Do you have to do a lot of monkey bars?
Yes. Oh my God. The more the better. Anytime that you get to have a good time with that. And honestly, every game I've had where something horrific has occurred, there's always laughter. By and large, 90% of the time, and that's a high stat, right?
Yeah, I think when I was playing as a player in the early '90s, I had a DM, and his philosophy was you're here for amusement, and that always stuck with me. I was like, well, that's not fun. But guess what? I played in the game every day, or every week. But that philosophy is you're here for my amusement. Now these days it's harder. Your table might not stay. So you have to down his hat. It already planned out, right? Because you always have those people good storytellers take that right turn. However you want to do it without being bummed out that they didn't go into that house that wanted. Maybe just make it circle back somehow. And make it funny. How I think that has a lot to do with that kind of stuff too. Is just making sure that the storyteller can keep everybody engaged.
But is some of that availability though? I think there's more. At least when I grew up, there was literally one group in town. So I mean,
yeah, true.
We had neighborhoods in Texas. It was this. The street was against this street, and it was so stupid because only the dungeon masters actually talked to each other at the table. We never interacted with each other, but every street had their. It's stupid because it was also in every when they say in the swing light, I was there. Washer and mom's. Here you go, candles and stuff, and it's I can put. No, he's.
Kelly, you might be gone, brother. I think you cut out.
That's okay. Am I on? Is that it? Did my wife turn me off?
No, we got you back now.
You're cut.
I was ready to just flip the power switch because she's where are you?
I'm shutting everything down.
We had one gaming network, and it was. I'm from a little town called Mount Sterling, and it was kind of redneckville for D&D. None of us really knew anything much about what was up, and except our GM at the time, and he was very well read, and I think just in awe of how dumb most of us were with all of this. But I kind of got my chops. What's that called? Where what is it called? You cut your teeth, get your chops. What is it? He kind of put me through the DM hoops, and because of him, I'm now running games years later and doing my thing. But I remember just so many times he would be looking at us as if we were such morons, and I felt like a god with my hobbit with his little bow and arrow, and And like I lost that from the player end of things, but I still get that writing out games and making up the worlds and the ideas. Like so, my joy has definitely shifted. Like, is it? It's work, obviously, right? But like, do you still get that giddy, shake your present under the tree kind of rush when you hit a nice rhythm or you come up with something just crazy cool? I still get that giddy little kid high.
You want to take this one first? Good.
Sure, yeah. Like I said, I enjoy the writing and creating probably more than DMing or playing. So I wish more people would post like reactions or even sample sessions in some of the environments or the adventures are made, because I really, really like to see how a different group plays through. I think that's a lot of fun. So just seeing everything done from a different angle. I mean, I totally intended it to go this way, well, you know, with obvious tangents planned for and some suggestions, but then they go completely around the block on you, and I'd really just like to see what more people do. So I definitely enjoy the creative side there a little bit more. So and that's where I get my kicks, I guess.
I the other day, because we just moved back to the States, I found a box of some of my old areas on my warp, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna run the Golden Age team, or you know, it was just when you find those old books of those adventures that you wrote, you know, years ago, and you're just like, oh my god, I gotta go back to it. Like that's what I love. I love finding, and sometimes go into like thrift stores and stuff, and you find old D&D books. I love
that. Oh my god, I love that.
I found one that had a guy's adventure written in it, like the whole thing, and I was like, I'm totally doing this, because that's the beauty, right? You find someone else put it in the book. It's been in there for. Well, it was a first edition book, so at least 78. So that, and it was a first edition adventure, so it's got to be super. I think that for me, I think it's more or less like I love writing it, doing adventures, but I love finding old adventures, either that I've done 20 years ago, 30 years ago, finding someone else's old adventure, and like, how can I use this? Can I make that? Do it.
That's man. I like when I run across some of my old stuff. I get a little cringy because I'll look at the writing and I'm like, oh man, you were trying so hard to be so cool. And you know, you might have these accidental moments back in the day, but it's very, very sweet to me to have like piles of those. I got notes from games 27 years ago, you know, that I could lay hands on in the next 5 minutes. And it's just the weirdest thing ever to see these little pieces of my existence that have been shaped through imagination land, you know, whether it was written by a friend or me or somebody from TSR, maybe Tor, whatever. It's a strange continuity, one that it's neat to be mixed up in, as weird as it is.
I think Andrew said it best, you know, as a game designer, to be a fly on the wall, done, written and published and put out there, and other people are test play. Just to be not, you know, near it is something, you know, that's the best feeling ever. Is someone's, you know, speaking the words you put down, or going the direction, the imagination, doing it. And it's a lot to find people that are like, yeah, I'll test. You know, can I watch? Because it's like weird, right? Or hey, can I zoom in and just like listen?
I stand quietly in the corner and watch.
Yeah. Can I take notes while you're over there? I think so. Gen Con is. I'm writing an adventure for Lost One, where I'm taking Fang Knight's Firehole. I'm taking Bloodstone Isle that we published, and so I'm using Bloodstone Isle because it's published, it's already written out there, and I'm taking content from a book that we have coming out soon and I'm gonna run a game, and I have 10 tables set up, so hopefully I can sell, or not sell them. They're all free, but that's gonna be my first play test. I'm getting feedback produced out there, and actually getting it for feedback. And that'll be my first some products that we're out putting together, and so we can publish something down the road.
It's
these
exciting.
conventions. Yeah, these conventions are the only way to.
I'm a little bit curious as to like the writing and sort of coming back to that world building stuff, because you were talking about writing for Lost Lorne, and I know you do some stuff elsewhere. So do you write something off the spur of, are you just thinking about it, or do you go and do you have is there like a Wikipedia or repository of stuff that you can look at and be like, okay, these are the things that I can, it's like when a new writer writes for Spider-Man or something, there are things that they can and they can't do.
So funny, I write for Andrew, and so he gives us, the right and left limits of what he wants to put out. What I love about writing gives you a framework of what you're doing. He's like, this is what's happening. Here's an adventure. Here's like a template, and fill in the middle of it, which is the best. I think that's the easiest for any writer that's trying to get into learning how to write for professionally or anything like that, is to find someone like Andrew that does the majority of it, because it's his thought process and what the book is going to be, right? Because every book, they're standalones, they're not connected. And so you're just coming, words and adventures, being that outsourced, because he could write it himself, right? Everybody could write something themselves, but it's about getting that external point of view. And, that's, so on that part, that's the easiest and funnest. I love doing that. When it comes to writing, so we're building a lot of that stuff, but we're making it at such a grand level that you have to, I'm using a book that, so I already have a setting in it, and then we're putting together this other book. So I'm taking the character creations and the concept of the main adventure from that book, but I already have the framework of what the world is already going to be like.
Is that for Lost Lorne, Kelly?
Yeah, that's for the Lost Lorne part.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, for me, I like having a little bit of framework, because freelance writing itself,
so
you can go anywhere.
So Andrew, how much framework and how do you go about putting that, the world information? What do you include in that so that somebody like Kelly can pick it up and start reading and writing an adventure for that? What kinds of things are included in there? Is there pages and pages and pages? Is it like an encyclopedia of, this is the world, play in it, but here are a few things that you can and can't do, or?
Well, it depends on where they jump into the process. Usually I have somewhere between 30, 50, 60, even almost 100 pages of stuff that is kind of like setting and character creation kind of notes, a little bit of lore, a lot of tables and charts, items, random stuff. And a lot of times it's just stuff that I think would be a cool flavor piece that may or may not get used. But then I also try to create like a storyline document for the one we're working on right now, which is the Demon Age. Kelly's going to have to write a specific demon so that it's modern day. There's 13 different demons, and they each have a theme. So we did the 7 deadly sins and the 6 vices, and so he was assigned one, given one an option, and we also had them taking place in different parts of the world. So he gets to write a profile and then try to fill it in, and I mean it varies. A lot of times the best way I can do it for them is to usually write like a prologue and a sample or two, and then just let people run with it. And I've worked with several of them for 3, 4, maybe even 5 books now. I'm trying to remember how many. So they're kind of used to my workflow process, but I don't know how much they always read, because it's what, like we talked about before, there's a lot that we can throw out there in terms of lore and background creation. But, sometimes they'll say, well, I want to throw in a magical item. And I say, well, I've already got 20 pages of them. Go check and see what might work in yours. Or if you want to, we'll throw a new one in there. I really want to use a monster. Okay, well, I've got these 17 monsters ready. So use that, or we can create a new one for you. So I try to be pretty accommodating. And to throw in like a chef reference there, because that's what you guys are all about. It literally is about adding the different spice to different cooks in there, because again, like he's saying, I could easily, well, not easily, but I have the time to write all of them, but I've found it to be pretty rewarding. Not harping after people to get stuff done, but I mean, like, just seeing where they would take it. I mean, if I tell each of you to write the demon of, greed, you're each going to write, even if we all set them in Vegas or something, you're all going to do it a different way. So it's really cool to see where people take my ideas and run with them. Just like we were saying, like, if you could be a fly on the wall watching somebody play the game, that's almost the same way I feel sometimes watching a writer take like a different turn than I expected with that chapter.
So are you involved in all of are you sort of the key element of starting all of the stories, or do you hand it off to like writers to tell a tale however they want based in the world that you've created?
So far, I've done kind of like the key framework on the project so far. I think when my ideas start to slow down, maybe we'll do something more. One of them, though, the previous one, somebody had said, but we want a little more interconnectivity, because we had 20 missions plus like an epilogue. So 21 different missions. That you want some interconnectivity. So I had a couple of the writers go through and kind of try to tie it together and give it more themes, and they really wanted stronger arcs, or some carryover from one mission to the next. So we tried to do more of that. Some of that really just depends too on how much some of the writers are willing to read what everybody else has been doing too. And with people's busy schedules, sometimes it's easier for me to kind of weave some elements together after they turn it in.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're just starting to write, or just you want to write, working with someone like Andrew, that's probably the best way to go, because he does do the framework. He does give you so much information that you could work from it, and you're not daunted by having to create so much. You're just creating a chunk, and then all of a sudden you can do another chunk and another chunk, because it's not over. We're like the different approach I take with the Muslim. It's so much. There's so much to write, so many different directions, a lot harder. So for someone just starting to write, that's probably not the best way to go, because you'll get over very quickly.
It happens fast. Yeah.
So fast. But if you find, like a writing team like Andrew's, it's kind of like the people that do intense writing for the company. They all come to Andrew, and it's like a break, kind of, because we just get to narrow our function, because we know that obviously Andrew's got everything planned and he's got a direction, and we're just helping along the way. So that's the fun of it. That's what I love about that type of writing. And I wish we had more team that functioned like.
Yeah, well, that's hard to do, and we have talked about this with Lost Lorne, and Michael and I have discussed the virtues or not of having the team size we have, which is up until really recently just us. I think there is, when you're talking about stories and you're talking about games and those overlaps, like you said, Andrew, those are the things that I think really solidify the world. It's those little parts that start to hook it all up together. I think though there's and I come back to this too, and I have a hard time sharing my writing. I don't mind chopping up an image if I've got something and it needs help. By all means, please help me. But I feel a little more possessive of my words and find that I struggle with that more than my ego for visual art, which is nearly dead because of Lost and I've lost all sense of like shame, like, because if you're putting a piece through the ringer and you need it to look a certain way, you've got to take your ego out of it totally, or you shouldn't be doing it. But I can't do the same for lore and my writing. You guys, and this is for everybody that's ever written more than 10 words for somebody else, do you find that hard to give up? Like, I just can't.
Yeah,
let's go first, Andrew.
I think it's sort of like the grieving process. There's like these stages. I think when you start something like, whoa, I'm on fire here. This is great. This is like the best thing I've ever done. And then you start getting other people to throw stuff in, and then you hit that kind of like the rut or that lull in the middle, and you're like, I just want this done. I don't know how great this is. Then it really starts to come together at the end. You're like, wow, this is looking better than I thought. And then you finally get that book in front of you, and you're like, this is good stuff. And then the first time you see somebody else looking at it, you're like,
right?
Be gentle.
It's perfect as is,
Don't look at the last paragraph on page 22. Don't look. Oh, why'd you look? But I mean, I think, I don't know. I think there's a lot of creative. I think most creatives will probably say something like that. I don't care if it's a musician or something. Unless you're just extremely like ballsy and out there, I think everybody has that like doubt. An actor, like, man, I think I really sucked up this scene, and nobody noticed. But I think everybody's there somehow. They're just maybe better at hiding it.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Like, it just depends who you're writing for, what you're writing. Like years ago, I was super picky about my writing and everything. But I've learned, because I research a lot of famous writers, and I step back and watch all the writers that I'm working with and everything. And so I've kind of got to the point where I'll write it, I'll let someone else look at it. Because if in a lot of people, this issue is that they get so focused on what they're writing, it's supposed to be, maybe it wasn't meant to be that in depth, right? Because it's just supposed to be a little bit. But you get so worked up, everybody starts writing, no, I did this, is my, it's perfect. But again, if you're writing for someone else, anything you turn into someone, it's not perfect, right? Not everyone's like, here's 4,000 words, expect all 4,000 to make it into print. Right, because if you have that thought process, you're going to be really upset every time you do it, because it's never going to be like, I'm going to use all 4,000 words. This is amazing, right? It's never going to be. And
that's why I don't write, because I refuse to accept that all 4,000 of my words are not exactly what they should be.
And I think it takes a long time for a person to really get that process. And like, I turn stuff into Andrew. I give it to him. Okay. And I'll get the book and I'll see how much extra. Right? Because if I get too sucked up into it, the same thing like the stuff I did for Gatwork. I gave him, I think, 3 to 5,000, and it was only 8 pages. I turned in 15 pages. But again, I can't be like, you didn't, like, what about this? I was just supposed to do this. And they're building it the way. Now, when I do my own books or kind of stuff, I have other people look at it, and then people make their notes, and I'll make the changes, because you can't to be a good writer and a good leader, you can't assume that everything you do is perfect, right? You have to get external feedback and accept it. Even if they tear you apart, because obviously you did something wrong and it's tearing apart your work. Or maybe you're just too focused on.
Or maybe Adam has a migraine and he just doesn't want to talk about what the cool idea that you have. So
right. But
not really possible.
You have to. If you're writing for Adam, you gotta accept it. If you're writing for Andrew, you just have to accept who you're writing for, right? If you're the one that's publishing the book, So like for Lost One, I'm not in any writing teams because I want to come in towards the end, and like Fang Night, I went in there and I was like, oh, this all has to like flowing wise, this doesn't match up. Like, it's not. And I give my explanations why, and it's like, well, I'm coming in as someone was a part of the writing team, so I'm not laser focused on what you're doing. I'm coming in player, but we're publishing this and back it. You always have to look at person to come in, look at the and give you the honest feedback. Because if everybody tells you thumbs up on everything you do, and
well, if all you get are yes men, then you get something like Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah.
And nobody likes that. Nobody likes that, you know? So I guess if you want your work to be Jar Jar Binks free, you gotta let that ego down.
I wouldn't say nobody likes Jar Jar Binks.
I can't imagine anyone does.
There's a certain age demographic that really jumps on board with Jar Jar. Misa.
In our industry, for our writers and developers, ego is probably number one. Ego
Yes.
can make and break your image towards what you're working or your company, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all about individual egos. And then when you put 15 of them in one room,
yeah,
and they all have that same ego of like, what I wrote is there. It's not going to work. You're going to get people.
Why don't you idiots understand?
Yeah, they're going to rage out of the room, or they're going to die on the thing that has. It's this small in the concept of what you're doing versus what the full picture. Don't down the hill. What I tell people is like, if you're so obsessed with this one little section, turn it into a supplement. Do pages of so dedicated. See, do a supplement, right? We'll sell that too.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's like.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Michael.
No, go Adam.
Well, so we're kind of talking about two different venues here, though, right? You've got the homebrew just because you like it, just that's what you run, and that's what has been at your table for the last 9 years, and all your people love it, right? And it may just be a personal game, right? That's your little world. That's like your guys' thing. And we're talking about doing work and world building, and you get published and you get a paycheck.
Professional side of it, yeah.
Right. So like those are different, right? And so if you're working for someone else, obviously, you got to have those reality checks for the content. You just have to have,
even if you're the publisher, if you're the boss of the whole thing, you have to, as those individuals, you have to be able to look at everything objectively. You have to take criticism.
Yeah.
You look at your team, you have to take everything all the way up, and then you have to look at the external. Homebrew stuff, that's easy. Do it. You're not worried about it being published or people saying things right for the.
Yeah, you're not beholden to all the stuff.
You get a new player, right? But
yeah,
a very important thing when you're a publisher or you're doing it professionally, you not only have to think about what you're writing, you have to what it means to the community too. So a lot has to do with logistical side of understanding your target and then understanding what's happening in the flow of the gaming industry. Because you could write something amazing, it can be really controversial. And if that's the direction you're going, great. But don't expect it might not be taken well. I always tell people, once you hit that publish button on a podcast or book publishing or something, it's out there. It's in the world, right?
Yeah.
So what you wrote is a reflection of you.
Yeah.
It is,
Or your team. That's another thing. Like, if your boss is like, it's still a reflection on the entire team. And so even
keep all your names on each chapter.
But see, like Andrew's like, at the end, I'll read through the book. I love the last book. I love the realms, because I want to also know, like, my name's in the book. I want to see what the perception of like the book, because again, you have like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 writers. They're they might be thinking differently, so what they're writing might be a little iffy right away, right? But for me, I'm always looking at not just looking at the, again, once it's published, it's out there, right? I'm thinking 10 years down. Because no one else. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious, both as a writer and someone who's being written for, Andrew and Kelly. Do you get, like, if someone, say Kelly for example, were to write something that's not in the world that you've created, or the lore, the history and stuff that you've created, are you receptive to that? Are you like, okay, well, we can expand the world a little this way, and that would be a fun way in which to make the world grow? Or do you feel like, it's more like, these are the parameters I've given you, can we sort of stay within that before we start growing the world, as, because worlds do grow and progress and things, we've gone through the Renaissance, and we are where we are now. Are those things that you think about your world in particular, or do you sort of set it down as like, this is the world in the way in which it looks now. Let's write it several adventures, games, campaigns, whatever, meals, this way, and then, we'll get to that eventually. Or do you, is it more of, a little more strict, and you're like, no, I kind of want to keep it in these guidelines, or you're free to do something that's, unexpected, and like, I didn't see somebody going this route, this is kind of interesting, yeah, let's see where this goes?
I mean, I think it depends, but honestly, most of the writers have been pretty good so far. There's been a couple times where they're like, I want to do it this way, and I'll be like, well, here's what's actually happening in the world. That doesn't mean that we can't make this happen, but that might be because this character's like deluding themselves, or they think this is how it's happening, but in reality, so we can usually tweak it. But a lot of times too, I think what helps is that I have like a menu of things. And there we go, another food reference. So, let's say we're writing 15 missions or chapters, and I'll say, all right, these are some of my ideas. Just start signing up for them. I did 3. You guys run with whatever you want, and they'll start like pitching ideas for one. Well, I want to do a leprechaun, and I want to do it this way. Or I want to do a red cap, and I want to do it this way. And so we usually have a really brief side conversation, and we'll kind of hash it out together. And I think we've been able to work pretty well so far.
Yeah, I don't think the leprechaun made it into the game.
I don't know if he had time. I don't know if he had time.
No, he didn't have time. It's something for future reference.
Leprechauns are usually probably drunk anyway,
and they're short too.
Yeah. Well, so what I did for Andrew is I wrote for that book. I wrote 3 different little sections, but I linked them together kind of. But it was so towards the end, but it wasn't able to be interwoven, right? You don't want to have disconnected something, but. When he did that, I didn't like, it happens, right? It'll be down the road.
Yeah, and part of it too is like, I mean, we're working at like a breakneck pace just to get content out. That was crazy. Just the amount of throwing together stuff.
A little more on the technical side, when something like that happens, I'm assuming you have like a working doc that the writers can read from, or how does that work for you as like a creator of worlds and stuff like that? Do you have like a set list of stuff that they can, pull from, and then if somebody comes and says, hey, I want to throw a leprechaun in there or whatever, and you're like, yeah, okay, and then do you add that to that document and you say it was introduced here at this time in this scenario, and moving forward this is now a thing?
To an extent. I mean, so typically we work with Dropbox and Google Docs, not because it's necessarily the easiest, but I think it's just universally available. So I usually keep like sample files and the most updated current version in the Dropbox. Then we also have a Google Doc that lists not only work shares to show, hey, I did this, and this. I made this map, I wrote this page and stuff. So I keep track of stuff on there. And then usually there's other tabs on there that'll have like the storyline. So you'll say chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And every once in a while, I'll take a screenshot and send. I mean, not that they can't see it anyway, but I'll send it to them and say, hey, we had 7 chapters and now we're at 9, and here's the 2 new ones. Here's where they fit in. And again, I throw like sample documents out there too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't hold anything back from them, because the more that's available for them to see in terms of samples or just lore or whatever is out there, I want them to see it. And sometimes they'll pull out little pieces and, hey, I saw this guy in chapter 3 and I want to pull him in too. So I've definitely had that before. Or, hey, do you have a guy in the setting that's like this? And I'll say, yeah, and so used him. You guys work together and figure out. I don't really do meetings. I just...
It's complicated. Everybody's so... It's hard.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. There's like 2 of us in our games, and it's still hard for us to get together and hash stuff out.
A lot of my games are podcasts, and I still have international 6 different countries. So I get it. It's hard to get everybody on the same time to make it work.
You know, with that in mind, we were thinking about running some of our games here as an in the kitchen. If you guys wanted to ever jump in with that, would you like to see what world building looks like with us? It's a crazy, zany place.
I think it'd be really references. Cool if you guys ran some of Andrew's adventures in here, and we played in it as players, and y'all ran it. One of y'all run it, and that would be cool, because they were test playing our products, right? Test playing the thing, and we get to sit in the corner and stare at people.
Yeah, see how they do it. Yeah.
To kind of go back, so like when you're, especially, so if you're a writer and you're coming to a person that they got a system, an example, like my first thing that I wrote with Andrew, I use a lot of history stuff. So I used a name for. Instead of calling her a druid, I use the real term from the 8th century. And I didn't think he'd catch it but he's a teacher, so I was like, oh, that makes sense. But because I like to just use, because I don't want to use terms of D&D. I don't want to use terms of potentially, and this is an important thing for writers, writing for someone, you have to make sure that what you're writing isn't canon or trademarked or copyrighted from a company. So you have to, and you can't, you don't want to rely on the publisher, the book to catch all that. So you creative with it. But we talked about what that Drew name was, and he's like, oh, it's not gonna, because of what it represents. And I didn't think about it, right? But I left it there. And most people probably would have fought tooth and nail sounded. But you have to realize that, you have to understand what the publishers, again, it's their reputation and yours at the same time. But then you also, it made me think like, oh, we should definitely check terminology that copyrighted, because that'll get the publisher in trouble, right? And we don't ever want that to happen with anybody. Us to do that, because at the end of the day, who's the responsible, right?
Adam.
Well, with that in mind, is there a resource you would recommend, like for new writers and world builders, like a list of canon, non-legal to use terms, language and such, or is it just sort of do your research and hope for the best? It's honestly up to your to the person you're writing for, right? And I do it both ways, right? I'm Losthorn. I'm the guy that pops in and goes, hey, that's copyright, or no, we can't use that situation. Where when I come to Andrew, I already know that kind of facts. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't really put that out there, because most of the writers understand that, like, oh, we can't use these certain technology. And sometimes I can't speak for everybody stuff, but there isn't a really good resource if you're writing a D&D style
then as a writer working for someone, you need to do the and look up copyrighted or trademarked, right? Because if it gets missed anywhere down the line and so-and-so company is like, whoa, that's mine, and we've already published, right? Guess what you have to do? You have to pay those people. That you have to purchase your book back from them because of you need to get all those copies. That's worst case scenario.
That sounds terrible, dude.
Yeah, you might have to pay a fine. You might have to pay a fine or pay the fees because whoever sued you, okay, I want this much money. And the published book is already out there, right? And then you make a thing and you have to re-release the book with correction. So again, it's a huge.
So we probably shouldn't put Chainsaw Man in our game.
So here's an
Chainsaw
writer.
Boy.
There you go,
A writer,
Chainsaw Boy.
A publisher. If you're going to use a terminology to something in the real world, say take D&D something, right? Or that's too narrow, too broad. Take Jason
Voorhees.
Yeah, Jason Voorhees. Yeah, say you name it exactly that, and you write the stats out as a killer from this camp, whatever, right? That's too close. It has to be. You could use the name of whatever it is. It just can't match what someone else has already put out, right? So if you use, that's why 5th edition, you take the OGL, you can't use Tasha's Cauldron of anything. It's their canon. But you could call it something else and like Fireball. I always use this example. Don't call it Fireball. Something. Change the stats. If it's a magic spell put out by 5th edition or by any D&D, just change the name of it. Change the stats. People get, oh, okay, I got it. You just have to change it enough to where it doesn't match.
We've got a school for spellcasters, and one of the main students is Carrie Potter. So it's a female lead. So
as long as it's not a 9-year-old boy from this place in England, you're good to go.
9-year-old girl, actually. So
yeah, see, there you go.
She's actually 10, but
depends. And also saying that you have to think of. If you're not ripping off from someone, but if you're using a reference like that, change it a little bit. You also have to see what your readers. That's basically this thing. You have to think about what people think about.
Yeah, that stuff comes preloaded with concepts and ideas and thoughts about what's going on with them anyway. So.
Yeah. So it really, again, it's just. The publisher, Andrew really has to do a lot of the due diligence and making sure that all of his writers are staying within the bounds of, so he doesn't get in trouble. Just like with, Lost Lorn, I do the same thing with everything. When Mark sends me a PDF of like, this is done, I'll go through it, and then I'll come back with notes. Or someone
no, it's not done.
Almost done. Yeah.
It's almost done.
Just so Bloodstone Isles, I looked at 3 of those books before it out because it's 5th edition and compatible. We had to make sure the OGLs are written correctly because you can't copy and paste the OGL. There's certain lines you have to read to be correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So I actually want to switch gears a little bit here and talk to both Andrew and Adam about, and maybe you too as well, Kelly, so what does that mean for an artist? For example, if Andrew has a character or a monster or something he's created, he's like, here's what I'm thinking it does. what does the, do you let the artist sort of have free reign on that kind of thing? Adam, when you're thinking about stuff from Lost Lauren, are you looking for very specific stuff in terms of it, or are you like, you know what, I want to mix this up a little bit? How does this look? Kind of makes me think of when in Spider-Man when Venom was created. I think the character prompt was like, he's like Spider, he's like the Black Spider-Man, he's got a bunch of teeth. And that was like one of the only things he got. And McFarlane was like, oh, I'm going to give him this, big ass tongue. And he's like a massive dude. And, sort of went with it. And that became the standard for that character. Is that like something that's beholden to the lore and the world building? Or are you open to, different interpretations? Or do you have like a specific thing in mind? And so on.
If you're talking about the art end of things, the visual aspects, like my role for Lost Lauren is that of I'm the AD. So my only job is to make sure that my art team is doing what the writers need, and so in that case, it always comes back to the world building, to the lore, and I find myself often asking for one of the writers to verify, does this individual have another eye where their ear was? Do they really have a horn there? Do they need, is this the armor they should be in?
Should they have tentacles?
Do they have tentacles? Should they have tentacles? And what orify is that tentacle exiting? And so for me, though, that's really it. I'm more of a checklist, making sure the work's getting done. So for Kelly, it would be different probably, but I have no interpretation other than what the boundaries are for what needs to be there. Everything else, is usually okay as long as it's okay.
For me, I'm kind
of... I muted Andrew. Hang on. Trying to unmute you, dude.
Look at Adam with his technology.
But that would be my answer.
No, we got you, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's getting close to bedtimes here, so things are getting slightly hectic. For me, I don't know. A lot of times, actually, I've altered what I intended just based on the art. I expect to do this. Yeah, it's like that square peg, round hole kind of thing. Hey, make this type of monster, and it turns out totally different. And so sometimes I've adjusted stat blocks or other things to fit. Because hey, look, this guy has tentacles, and I didn't expect it. He's got tentacle powers.
If Adam's drawing it, you should expect it.
I don't know. Or a lot of times we'll just have a pile of art and say, hey, here's 50 pieces. Just go through and figure out what kind of fits your setting or what you want. So we go both ways. I try to have some stuff available that way they can search through if they have ideas and need inspiration.
That's cool.
Versus, hey, I narrow-mindedly decide, not in a bad way, but just in my vision I had this creature, so this is what I want, and then we'll try to make that work when possible. But otherwise, I think it's always cool just to have kind of a folder, and just hey, you can always use this and run with it if you want to.
How many hours a week do you say you put in for all of this?
Most nights, honestly, and a little bit on the weekends. So probably weekdays, probably about 2 hours a night, sometimes 3. Weekends, 2, 3, 4, 6 hours sometimes. It just depends. We just wrapped up a comic book on Kickstarter, so I spent several hours just doing fulfillment and that kind of stuff. And
that stuff's the best.
My lovely wife is in our audience here. That is Love S down there. We are going to at some point interview the spouses and or significant others of all of us and what it's like to be cohabitating with a person that is 80% of the time in a different reality. And I think it would be an interesting interview. I did want to start wrapping this up. We've got 10 minutes and a lot of shout outs. You guys have been outstanding guests. I would love to continue this talk, but Andrew from Media Stream Press, Kelly from Maximum Roll Entertainment, the guys from Nothing Ventured, Nothing Gamed, outstanding podcast, and a big part of us, apparently, of Brown before I even knew Battle Sauce was a thing. Michael, did I leave anybody out there?
I'm trying to remember how to pronounce Ardena Liqueur. Is that right? He was there.
That sounds right.
Gave us some shout outs. So what I think I'm going to do is, we had some pretty good dialogue going on in the chat. I think I'm going to add that on our Discord so that can be read if people want to read that as well. I typically don't include that stuff with the YouTube just because it's super difficult to read on this great quality that we're doing. But I will post that so people can read that as well. And I just want to say thanks for everybody popping in and checking us out and talking tonight. We hope to do some more of these too in the very near future. Probably next week we'll have something else, so we'll see.
Well, I think of Andrew and talked about how he uses AI with you guys, because we talked about it a couple weeks ago, and I think because Andrew uses a little bit of AI.
That has to be in the kitchen, man.
Yeah, that'd be great.
There's so much to say about AI, and it's going to shock everybody, me included. I don't know who I am anymore. But yes, I would love to do an in the kitchen just about AI. I think it would be a blast.
It's very
quite controversial.
Yeah. I don't know about the wives. My wife doesn't. She's not a gamer at all. She has nothing to do with the gaming. I think getting her down here would be like, now you're wasting my time.
Now your little hobby's cutting into my time.
How much are you making doing this?
Yeah, that's every month when I pull hundreds of dollars out, going, I need to do it. So like, yeah, how much is coming in that's going out? And, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah,
too many questions. Too many questions.
Need to have more coming in than going out. I think that's the rule of thumb.
Yeah.
One of these
I heard that somewhere.
I just lay on the ground and spin in the circle when she starts talking to me like that. Then just walk away.
Like the 3 stages.
Yeah. So, I guess, guys, with that being said, any last shout-outs for anything? Remember to plug as much of your own stuff as you would like.
Yeah. We've got that Demon Age coming out soon. I think we're going to try to launch around free RPG Day on 6/24.
Yeah.
And we'll be giving away the prologue starter mission for free. But prior to that, in the next day or two, I have to double check Kickstarter because I already sent it to review. So you'd be able to just sign up for notifications at least.
Great.
And I want to get at least one session out there so people can hear, see, whatnot. Yeah.
I was just saying, it's a forum,
Hey, why not? No, that'd be cool. Other than that, I've got other ideas lined up, and I think I'm typically doing somewhere between 2 and 4 Kickstarters a year. So,
man, we got to talk more about that later, dude. That is crazy. Just crazy.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I remember what I said about the money coming in. We got to work that. The next one too, we might be doing physical items, and it's so easy just to do digital, and then I can pay my people 14 days after we wrap, but I don't know.
Yeah, physicals are nice, but at the same time, PDF's pretty good too.
Mm-hmm. It's all territory, though, and it's so many people are so interested now in so many things, and with access, man, there's no reason not to play around in that. We've had, the merch talk has been really revving up lately for us too. It's exciting. It's exciting. What about you, Kelly?
Lost Land Games is coming out with Crest Kicks Berries, followed by Books Fang Night coming up soon afterwards. A bunch of stuff actually. Until we narrow it down, and then I'm coming out with a beer supplement with a mechanic system, allows you to play in. It's just a rule mechanic, but I'm also surrounding it how to brew beer, so you'll be able to something.
That's genius, homie. That is super cool. Super cool. I like that a lot.
Cool. That's it for me.
For us guys, check out the Discord. We got things happening there. We got our rule book condensed down, the boiled down version, and we're working on wrapping up a revamp for the rule book with all the badass art and all the cool write-ups, and it's just on the verge. Again, it has been a pleasure, guys, and it's okay, sir. You can be here earlier next time. Ticketing Tree, it's good to see you. But as we say every time, it's all in the sauce, and may your evening be great, guys, and we will let you know when we do this again. We'll ring the dinner bell.
Yeah, thanks again, you guys.
With food analogies.
It's nonstop.
Have a good one, guys.
Yep.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
I don't know if I said it, but I have a culinary degree.
Dude, again, we gotta talk. We gotta talk later, brother.
Dude, yeah. All right, y'all. Thank you much.
Have a great
See
night.
ya.